Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
Man, I've actually watched the Vikings a couple of times, and it's just like I know they have a top 10 offense, if I'm not mistaken. So it's like watching like Dalvin Cook hit the hole and like break for like a 60-yard run. It's like you're saying to yourself, like, look, I want to be blocking for a guy like that. Seeing Kirk Cousins throwing like a deep ball to Justin Jefferson, and it's like explosive plays happening all across the field. From anybody who's on the field, like you want to play in that type of offense.
You know, you've seen teams kind of manipulating around to make sure they got the guys they wanted. Everybody, I don't want to call, falls in love with a guy that they want to go get. And I think they're all going to be great players. I thought, the team's made a lot of great picks, but, all I can speak of if we were considering the guy strongly at 14 and still able to get him where we got him, that was a great night for us.
I hate to say instant starter. You know what I mean? These guys got to come in here and prove themselves just like everybody else does. Hopefully that's what he is. It was important for us to get some more size, like I said before, with our offensive line. We felt like we needed some bigger guys in there as well, and and there was defensive guys we're looking at too.
Football.
Boys, welcome to Purple Daily. Mackie, Judd, executive producer Declan, presented by TCL. Enjoy more of what you love with TCL. Mike Zimmer looking sharp at the post-game podium last night.
Do you like the coat?
Dude, that was retro. Little almost like an Alabama, like old Bear Bryant feel to the sport coat there.
One question though. The National Football League generates billions and billions of dollars, right? The COVID-19 sticker. Like we couldn't come up with like a better like patch or something behind them. Like it looks like welcome to the party. Just write your name down and put hello. My name is Rick.
My name is Rick, and I have been vaccinated.
Like this league's worth billions, and they're like, hey, just slap that sticker on your sport coat and go out there and show them we're anti-COVID.
Oh man, it's what a bold stance, by the way. Anti-COVID. We are anti-COVID here.
We have never been for COVID, ever.
So we're gonna do a few things on Purple Daily. First of all, thank you to everybody for just hanging out with us all night last night on the Purple Daily / Vikings Vent Line live draft special. The listens and the views are still coming in, but it was the most successful night in the history of Purple Daily last night, and we thank you. We moved over 14,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel, and so we had a blast. We love just sort of being the leaders of this community, but really it's driven by all of you Vikings fans. And we greatly appreciate you. And we're going to do it again tonight, by the way. There's going to be another – we'll jump in sometime in the second round, and we'll go live and we'll react, and we'll open up the vent lines again because the Vikings have a lot of things they can do tonight. So on this episode of Purple Daily, we'll give our sort of second-day thoughts on the first round yesterday. We'll give you some ideas of who the Vikings could target in the second and third round tonight. But, boys, let's start out with the most important thing, which is making fun of the Green Bay Packers and their fans. This is Packer Vent Line, courtesy of our friends, the fan in Milwaukee, and our close friend, I believe Rami Makloff, was the one who was stirring the drink last night.
I've never liked Mark Murphy. Never liked him really at all. He's more interested on, making skating rinks around Lambeau Field and things like that, in my opinion. That's just my opinion.
The thing with Love, they drafted him last year. Doesn't that sound awfully familiar? Shouldn't it sound awfully familiar to him, considering that's exactly what they did to Favre? Exactly what they did to Favre. But yet, Favre stuck around for, 3 more years, and Rodgers sat on the bench? So why would Rodgers think that Love all of a sudden is now the guy that's going to steal his job from him?
I blame him. This type of thing, being butthurt or whatever you want to call it, over them drafting a quarterback of the future is exactly why you lose NFC championship games, buddy. And if you're not going to be able to win that game like Montana did, like Brady did, like all these other greats did multiple times, then you're just a large cap hit because Mark Sanchez got the 3 NFC Championship games. So you know what I'm doing tonight? I want number 2 from the Jets. That's all I care about. If you want to throw in more, if you want to sweeten it more, fine. Give me Quentin Williams. In fact, we'll pay the difference between the 2 salaries. But I need Zach Wilson, and I need Aaron Rodgers out of here.
Aaron was gone the very next day after the Packers lost the championship game to film his Jeopardy. He's only half there. He's only half into football. He's into it when it's fun.
Yes.
So we're dumping on Rodgers.
Dude, they're turning on him.
26-6 the last 2 regular seasons, and we're dumping on Rodgers. You know what? I will give you a team right now that will take a guy who spends a large portion of his time on a game show and a portion of his time playing quarterback in the National Football League. Call Rick Spielman right now. I bet he would take that guy. Hey, you want to film Jeopardy? Wherever you want to do it's fine with us.
Dude,
as long as you're there for the games.
This is what happened at the end of the Brett Favre run, too, is they just started all the fans started lashing out at Brett Favre, like, well, he just retires all the time. He's just and then they burned his jerseys and they wrote him off. And then, of course, predictably, 5 years after the fact, they're having the retirement of the jersey ceremony, and he's back together with Bart Starr and Aaron Rodgers. Sorry about burning your jersey and lighting your restaurant on fire, Brett. We love you. Like, it's so. By the way, George Payton, the Broncos general manager, former Vikings assistant GM. So he said, I think he's doing a press conference this morning because I'm seeing these quotes come out. So Mark Schlereth had reported yesterday that it was basically a done deal. Rodgers was going to be a Bronco. Mm-hmm. And so George Payton said he felt, quote, compelled to do his due diligence on Aaron Rodgers when a third party made it clear to him that Brian Gutekunst had no desire to entertain such a conversation. Payton quickly abandoned the speculative scenario and pivoted back into draft mode. So maybe this is going to be amazingly, wildly uncomfortable between the two parties, but maybe this thing is dead after all.
So who is Teddy the Broncos starting QB then?
As of right now, yes. Well, I mean, him and Drew Lock are going to.
No, I know, but I mean, I'm just very interested in this dynamic. I don't know that Teddy can be. I don't know. Just seems to me that after what we saw in Carolina, unless he keeps coming back from the leg problem and the various injuries he's had, that is going to be. I don't know. I don't know. I would count on him completely.
You don't have one quarterback. You got 2 quarterbacks at your disposal. I think they're sitting pretty right now. I don't know what you're talking about. I think they're doing
Declan has quarterback beer. Basically, like beer trifocals is what I would call Declan's quarterback evaluation.
Bottle glasses.
So, boys, after sleeping on it, now that you've had at least 3 hours sleep last night and we're back at it again this morning, what are your thoughts on the first round for the Vikings and what they did trading back and taking Christian Darrisaw, Judd?
I think they did a very good job. I think the only second guess, and it's more of a question than a second guess from my end that I have, are what was the real interest that the Vikings had in Justin Fields before the Bears made the trade with the Giants and got ahead of the Vikings in the draft and took him? And were the Vikings aggressive in that vein? Did they? How much did they like him? Because he is the one quarterback that was around their territory of 14 at the time of the draft, and they didn't get. I still cannot get myself worked up about the Mac Jones thing. If Mac Jones goes on to have a great career with the Patriots, that will definitely be talked about and second guessed. I personally, right now this morning, can't get worked up about that. And if they look, to me, it's a very fine line here. If they drop back from 14 to 23 and one of those pass rush ends who was not there by the time they picked had been there and they took one, I would have rolled my eyes and said, really, more defense, which is what, as a cynic, I expected. And they did not do that. The fact that Darrisaw then dropped from 14 to them at 23 and that they still accumulated some more collateral and made what is a, on paper, good trade with the Jets to get more, and then got a left tackle, I like. And the second part too, and I was going through this after we got done with our show last night, and it's an important dynamic to a conversation, Phil, that we had on the old show quite a bit, and at the time was absolutely relevant and now has pivoted and changed. Starting with the 2018 draft, Rick Spielman has addressed offensive line in the first 2 rounds a lot. O'Neal in 2018 is your starting right tackle. Bradbury, who is a question mark, but he was a first-round pick, starting center. Ezra Cleveland, second-round pick, 2020, is your starting right guard. Christian Darrisaw, barring something bizarre happening, first round 2021 will be your opening day left tackle. So the fact that Spielman went years, or it felt like he did, without addressing offensive line in the first or second round is now a bygone thing. They have, for the last several years now, definitely finally did what we talked about, which was looked at the fact that they were not being serious enough about that position and addressed it early in the draft.
Yep. I loved what they did last night. You know, it's sometimes Rick gets carried away with the Trader Rick thing. Like he always seems to prioritize wanting double-digit draft picks and making sure that he's trading back to accumulate more picks. And so he's more of a quantity drafter than a quality drafter. Not that he's not focused on quality. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying he's ignoring quality, but sometimes I feel like, dude, okay, 15 draft picks is a little aggressive. Maybe use some of those to move up in a couple spots strategically. I think they're going to move up into the second round strategically tonight. In fact, I will not be happy if they take the 7 picks they have between rounds 3 and 4, where there's a lot of good value and players. You could leverage those picks to move up into the second round. If they look to move back with that collection of picks, it's going to make me mad. But I was not upset with the way that they moved back last night for 2 reasons. Number one, a lot of the blue chip type guys like the Penei Sewells, like guys that you would sort of cross your fingers and hope would fall. Rashawn Slater, who was drafted 1 spot before you. You know, a lot of those guys, and you could even say Justin Fields, that the price to move up to 7 as they were having discussions with the Lions, according to Doogie, involved future first-round pick and maybe more. That they just deemed it more valuable to move back if they thought they could still get one of the guys that they had circled in Christian Darrisaw. So I'm going to echo what Rick Spielman said. All of these guys are lottery tickets to some extent. And so if you can have a guy identified at 14, still get him 9 picks later, and fleece the Jets in the process and pick up 2 third-round picks, and people who looked at the draft value chart said they picked up the equivalent of an extra 4th-round pick of value in that trade. And so obviously it'll depend on if Elijah Vera Tucker pans out for the Jets and if Christian Darrisaw pans out for the Vikings, and that will be how this draft is graded in the long haul. But really, it's about process because, again, you don't know. Like Elijah Vera Tucker and Christian Darrisaw and everybody else that was drafted in the first round, there's a certain percentage bust on their head. And so all you can do is work good process. And I thought the Vikings did a great job of that last night. And they fixed their most glaring need on offense. The second most position next to quarterback on offense is left tackle. And they had some options. They could have moved Ezra Cleveland. They could have moved Brian O'Neill. But going into the draft, they did not have a left tackle, and now they have one that almost everyone feels great about, and a guy that was 15th on Pro Football Focus's big board going into the draft.
I was really afraid the one thing was that they were going to continue first-round defense and go pass rush end, and I was going to melt down then because it's just like it's too much. But this is good. Yeah, this is fine. I think that, as we discussed last night, no matter what you think of the Vikings, they definitely have a mission statement somewhere, right? With Rick and with Mike and the Wilfs. And I don't think that we necessarily completely agree with that statement, Phil. But I mean, it does say a few things. It says accumulate as many picks as possible in each draft, which they do. And it also says be as competitive as you think that you can possibly be for the next year. Which I don't love. Like, I do think that there are times to take a step back and say, yeah, I don't know about this year, but I do know that if it's not great, it will benefit us in the long run. They 1000% don't see it that way. So they are always going to, as far as I can tell, they are always going to draft for essentially that year. And The Darrisaw pick I like because it serves two roles. One, it does help you right now. He should plug and play on opening day of training camp this summer. And secondly, if you're right, you just got 5 years of team control, a really friendly contract salary cap wise for a player who plays a marquee position.
What about you, Dex? Now that you've slept for an hour and a half after posting all of our content on demand to Score North platforms, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a good pick. If I put a grade on it, I would say it's in the first round of what they did, 'cause it's more than just picking Christian Darrisaw, obviously, with the capital they picked up. I think it's a B+. I'm going to go with a B+. I think it's too early to call it an A, and I know everyone always criticizes grades right away after a draft. You can't really grade a draft class till like 2 years out to really get the full spectrum, but the fact that they targeted Darrisaw, the mocks had Darrisaw at 14, the Vikings were able to move back 9 spots. I mean, my phone was blowing up from my friends saying, why are we just skipping out on these tackles? Why are we skipping out on these tackles? I said, I wouldn't be surprised if those same tackles are available again by the time the Vikings pick at 23. And this still gives you enough capital if you want to move up to the second round. To Judd's point of, I think there's a misconception with fans on, the Vikings they never addressed the offensive line. They never addressed the offensive line. They have addressed the offensive line. It's their evaluation of the talent they have brought in that is, I think, the more criticizing part. They signed Riley Reif to a big contract. They have found Brian O'Neill. They've taken Garrett Bradbury. They've now taken Christian Darrisaw. Ezra Cleveland's a second-round pick. Judd just listed it out. There's first and second-round capital there. There's Riley Reif, who was signed to a big contract. So, yes, they've taken stabs at the offensive line. It just hasn't executed to the way that fans want it to see. And I do think that is a big misconception of where fans try to figure out why the Vikings ignore the offensive line.
And I think that, in fairness, Bradbury is still, to me, a jury is 1,000% out. It might be a bad pick. I mean, it might be a really bad pick. But in fairness to them, O'Neill is good. Like, he's a legit player. He's a good player. Cleveland, I think, is going to be good. I think he was a good pick. Darrisaw should be, right? Here's the problem, back to what Dex said, where I think we all get an impression of things, and we're not wrong, but it's why it was so detrimental. When you play a guy like Dakota Dozier for 16 games, what are we supposed to think? Like, you literally have a decent line. It's not great, but a decent line. Center might be weak, okay? But then for 16 games, so I'm not talking 5 games, I'm not talking 8 games. For 16 games, you start a guy at left guard who has no business playing. And he grades out awfully game by game, but he still plays. And we see that. And fair or not, I think that's our impression of how they feel about the line, because he is so bad. So we don't see O'Neill or Cleveland as much. What we see is, why aren't you addressing this? And that's the frustration. And that's where, like, a few years back, Phil, Joe Berger, who was a veteran journeyman guy who signed, but they plugged him in and he was sufficient. He was okay. He was, dare I say, maybe good, okay? And we all said, I get that. But the Dakota Dozier thing, I think, is what blew us away in terms of saying, are you taking this seriously? And that's their own doing when you start that guy for an entire season.
Yeah. And now if Darrisaw pans out, a lot of the excuses for why this team wouldn't be a Super Bowl contender start to go away. I mean, I still think there's some depth moves to be made. They don't have it perfect at every position. I'm not saying that. They still need a second edge rusher to emerge. And maybe DJ Wanham is that guy internally. You know, we don't know who the left guard is going to be. So they don't have a pristine, perfect roster all around. I don't know if any team does in the NFL, because it's just really hard when you're limited with cap space. But if they make you feel a little bit better, let's say they draft at some point here in the next couple days another interior offensive lineman, maybe some secondary depth, and now you feel a little bit better about some of these positions. Their defense should pop back up into the top 10, maybe even top 5 with all the pieces they have. I think Patrick Peterson, working under Mike Zimmer, is going to see a resurgence in his career. Christian Darrisaw as a potential franchise left tackle might take him a little bit as a rookie to figure out some of these NFL bull rushes off the edge, right? But, I mean, he's a blue-chip talent. And you've got Brian O'Neill. Ezra Cleveland was solid at right guard. I mean, you've got some pieces now And it just kind of feels like, okay, things aren't ever going to be perfect. So Kirk, offense, Mike Zimmer with your defense, this is it, man. Like, this is, I think when it comes to the field stuff that you brought up earlier, because there's a lot of indications, and Doogie's been doing some great reporting on this. The Vikings were interested in Fields, and were even talking trade with at least the Lions to move up, and maybe even talking trade with other teams, the Cowboys, etc. And I think they surveyed the landscape. They probably saw the Aaron Rodgers to the Denver Broncos rumors and reports coming in at the beginning of the draft. And if they were on the fence about Justin Fields, who probably doesn't help you a lot in 2021 because you're still going to play Kirk Cousins, or a lineman that can help Kirk Cousins, I think they probably had all these discussions leading up to the draft, and then they had him again during the draft, and they said, listen, we put all the work into making this defense better again in March. There's a couple tackles on the board that immediately elevate our offensive line and help fix the main problem offensively from last year. And Kirk is still in his prime. He's still our quarterback, and that money is a sunk cost regardless. And so why not give him the protection that he hasn't had the last couple years and take excuses off the board? And so I see their logic, and we'll get more into the Justin Fields thing. We're going to do a deeper dive on Mackey and Judd today, so check that out. That's our other daily show, Mackey and Judd, Purple Daily, all of it at scorenorth.com. And I see their logic. They are all in for 2021 after this Darrisaw pick, and if Aaron Rodgers does get traded out of the conference, they are the clear-cut favorites to win the division, and you can start to see a path for doing some damage in the playoffs if this team gels and stays healthy.
I've got a question off the Darrisaw pick, and it goes to how the Vikings approach offense from a play calling and philosophical standpoint. If you are putting together or have a line that can now sufficiently pass protect, and I think Cousins was sacked 36 times last year, which was the sixth most among QBs, which is way too much. But if you're putting together a line now that's going to be anchored by guys who can pass protect, does that change Clint Kubiak's style from what his dad did as far as giving Cousins the ability to throw more as well to Jefferson, Thielen, Irv Smith? And I mean some deep shots too. So I don't mean just dink and dunk and matriculate down the field. I mean deep shots. Does this give them a freedom that they didn't feel that they had if the line does continue to improve to, as we like to say, let Kirk cook?
Yeah, what I would love to see. So last year, the Vikings and Kirk Cousins were 27th in the NFL in pass attempts. They had more than 100 fewer pass attempts than the Steelers, the Chiefs. I'm just looking at other playoff teams. There's some bad teams on this list that were just behind all the time, like the Cowboys and the Falcons. The Buccaneers had 100 more pass attempts. And even the Washington football team, which wound up going to the playoffs sub 500, had 100 more pass attempts. The Vikings have the weapons, and they've got the quarterback to throw the ball more. And if you want to go from a good offense to a great offense, you're going to have to throw the ball more. You're not going to just like bust off 2 70-yard touchdown runs every single game.
Exactly.
I'm not saying throw the ball on every play. I'm not saying ignore the run game. You can still be run heavy, but I think even if it's like a small handful more passes per game, if it's 3 to 4 more passes per game in spots that make sense on second and short, the Vikings are one of the most conservative teams on second and short, for example, right? Open it up and let Kirk Cousins find Justin Jefferson twice more per game and see what happens. And it's possible that it was less of a schematic thing and more of a we only trust our offensive line to go forward and block for Dalvin Cook thing.
Right.
And maybe Christian Darrisaw, who's also in college a great run blocker as well. He's just a great all-around offensive lineman in college. But maybe to your point, maybe this gives them more confidence to drop back an extra 2 or 3 or 4 times per game in strategic spots to score an extra few points.
If on second and short, you scheme in, let's say second and short throughout the course of a football game, you get in there two more Justin Jefferson 9 routes. Go ahead and hit the football sounder.
Oh, sorry. My bad. There you go. Got
football. It. 2 more JJ 9 routes, okay? Just 2 more. think about the potential there. And now this would take two things. One, trust in your line, which I would think would have to be building somewhat. And the second thing, it would take an agreement between between Clint Kubiak, Zimmer, and Cousins that you are going to possibly throw two more fairly at times risky passes. I mean, at times Jefferson might surprise people. I don't think this will happen a lot and be open, but that's also a tough throw at times. But we know that Kirk can make that throw. That's what I want to come back to. You know what? Let's focus on what we know Kirk can do well. And we have seen this with Diggs for sure. Kirk can make a very tough throw. I don't know that he likes to, and I think that there are people with the Vikings that are scared to do this, but we have seen him make very tough throws, and they've been things of beauty, right? So, Phil, if he did it twice more, which is not going to statistically shift a lot of things. I mean, it's still not going to put the Vikings top 20 in passing attempts, but it would be impactful, influential type plays. That's the type of thing that I think could shift things in a very big way just by doing a small thing that basically emboldens a couple more people on what you think they have the potential to do.
Yep. By the way, there are some names on the board, some interesting players that could fit the Vikings that we're going to throw out in just a second. But this episode of Purple Daily powered in part by our friends at PXG Minneapolis. If you're a golfer and you like getting out there during the golf season and improving your game, these Gen 4 golf clubs have landed from PXG. Drivers, fairways, hybrids, irons. These are PXG's flagship clubs and hands down the best performing clubs PXG has ever made. Plus, they've got great apparel, too. I just got a couple PXG hats in my repertoire now I'm very excited about. You can find spring and summer
I'll go
apparel.
check at my door for my stuff.
Well, maybe you should go golfing for once, and maybe they'll send you some
I wear
swag,
dude.
Maybe you should get off your couch, Zolgad.
I wear swag, okay, on my couch.
PXG in Southdale Center, PXG Minneapolis, and PXG.com/Minneapolis. So I'll just give you a few interesting things here from the interwebs. So PFF has a full list of the best available players, and Daniel Jeremiah also has a full list on NFL.com of the best remaining players. And I think the one that's the most interesting, I'll give you two of the most interesting offensive line candidates for the Vikings to look at today. Interior guard help for the Vikings. Kendrick Green, guard from Illinois, who according to Pro Football Focus, was graded as one of the best offensive linemen in all of college football last year. The write-up says he's one of the most explosive linemen in the draft. After switching from defense early in his career, he tied for the FBS lead for big-time blocks, quote-unquote, among interior offensive linemen this past season. So I don't know what a big-time block is, but Kendrick Green had a lot of them. Big-time blocks. And then another name that keeps popping up here as a guy that could be sort of late second round, early third round is Trey Smith, the guard from Tennessee. So if you're looking for guard help, there are guys on the board that could help the Vikings out. Plus the three quarterbacks too. Whether you love Kirk or hate Kirk, he doesn't really have a backup right now, and they could use a developmental guy under contract for a few years, holding a clipboard. So Kyle Trask, Kellen Mond, Davis Mills are all going to go most likely tonight, either in the second or the third round. And so the Vikings, and then there's a bunch of edge rushers too that could be interesting. One that pops up on a couple lists here is, and I might butcher the pronunciation, but Dio Odenigbo from Vanderbilt. So keep an eye on some of these guys tonight for the Vikings. I think guard, edge, quarterback, maybe interior defensive line if they find someone that they think can play three technique and put some pressure on quarterbacks up the middle.
So they've got picks in the third round. They've got picks 66, 78, 86, and 90. And I think what you said at the top of the show is probably the thing that I'm also going to be the most focused on. And I think they'll do it, is what do you do to get into the second round? What do you do here? So to backtrack on a thing that I talked about last night, I don't think we think our frustration with Rick is trading back in the first round at times. And I don't think that's true. I think he's done a pretty good job when he has traded back. I mean, last night on paper, that's a great trade, right? That's a great trade. I don't think our frustration is the first round at all. I think our pent-up frustration that we don't sit on the couch and acknowledge to our football therapist is more so the middle round, starting in the third, of moving back to accumulate more picks later in the draft. Because I think the perception there, and it's probably accurate, is why are you not taking the best players available who are still there in, let's say, the third, fourth, or fifth round?
Yes.
Like how is a seventh round pick who might not be drafted, but you stop him and you draft him so you don't have to negotiate with him against teams after the draft? How's that a good idea? So I think our pent-up frustration with Rick and the Vikings is way more moving back when there's potential quality there in the third, fourth, or fifth round, and that quality is just clearly superior to that extra seventh round pick that you get.
Yep. I'm with you. It's seventh round picks. Okay. It's great every once in a while when one of them becomes a special teams player for you, or on the rare occasion that and you get an undrafted Thielen or Anthony Harris, right? Yeah, it happens. But you're more likely, if you load up on third and fourth round picks in this case, to find a couple guys in that range than you would in the seventh. So that's my one plea to Rick tonight. If you're going to trade, trade up. Trade up into the second round and get a player that has a better chance of being a contributor or a Pro Bowler, for example.
If they don't take a QB today, are you going to be disappointed? Do you care? Do you care much about this next tier, this next group of three, really, that exists?
My brain works very logically with things like this, in that, all right, there's a little bit of emotion, but
did you see Declan's like, what?
Okay, yeah.
Logical? This isn't. This isn't logic. It's football.
Yeah. So here's where I'm at with it. Okay. There is historically, once you get past the first, second rounds, okay, and obviously there are Russell Wilsons and Tom Brady's, but when you get to the third round or the fourth round, there's like a 20% chance maximum that those quarterbacks pan out to be starters for you, like quality. They gave you at least a few years of being a good high caliber starter. So I'm not going to be super upset if they don't take that 20% chance on a quarterback. No, there's probably a similar percent chance on any other player that you would draft as well. I mean, at least the good news for some of the other positions is, at the very least, they can become like depth guys or special teamers or something. I mean, if a quarterback can't play, he can't play, and he's just off your roster. So it's a little bit more of a volatile pick. So would I be highly interested in seeing what Kellen Mond could do, mobility and sitting behind Kirk for a year? Yeah, I would endorse that draft pick. Would I savage them for not picking a quarterback in the third or fourth round? No, it would be a little disappointing. But they've clearly committed to Kirk. They had some discussions this offseason. They kicked the tires on potentially getting out from underneath that contract, but they are committed to Kirk in 2021. And while it would be really nice to have a backup that isn't Sean Mannion, let's face it, if they have to use a backup quarterback for any stretch of time in 2021, they're going to lose games anyways. So I would like them to draft a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I will not lose 4 nights of sleep after the draft if they don't draft a quarterback.
Will you lose 3 nights of sleep? 2.5.
You got so many picks in the third and fourth round. It really makes no sense to not draft a quarterback. Yeah. Like, you've got more picks at this point than any team in the draft in the NFL for the next 2 nights. So use one on a quarterback and see what happens. That's where I'm at with it.
Second round pick.
You're trading up. You're trading up.
Trade up. Yeah, I am 1,000%. I don't need this many potential third and fourth round picks. I think it's what it's 7 picks in those 2 rounds. I can easily use collateral from those 2 rounds to get a second round pick. And then you know what? If you take a QB, that's fine. My guess, so if I had to handicap this thing, my guess is that the first pick off the board for the Vikings tonight, when they do make that pick, I'm going defensive end.
Here's another name to watch then, and this is probably more of a third round. I don't know if this is a trade up into the second round, but our guy Tyler Fornes turned us on to this name. Cameron Sample, edge rusher from Tulane.
Mm-hmm.
He had an 84 run defense grade and a 90 pass rushing grade for Tulane last year. He was among the best graded edge rushers in all of college football. And the question is, he didn't really play against great competition, and so that's why he's not going to be quite as high because he played at Tulane. But Cam Sample could be somebody that the Vikings have their eye on as an edge rusher in the 3rd or 4th round the next couple days. So, all right, any final thoughts from you guys before we go back into hibernation until our live stream tonight on Purple Daily YouTube?
I told Mackie this morning, last night after I went to bed, after uploading everything, I had recurring dreams that I was in war rooms and mock drafts all night long. I was literally dreaming of football. I was dreaming of football last night.
Viking specific?
I think
or
so.
what?
I got to start writing. I know, like they say, you should write down your dreams right away when you wake up because you forget them as time goes on. But yes, I remember being like with Rick Spielman and other people in TCO, and they were like the draft board was playing out, and Trader Rick was on the phone. And like I kept waking up in the middle of the night, and then I'd go back to sleep, and I'd be back in the draft room. It was crazy. I was I was in a REM cycle of draft cycles, man. It was awesome.
Oh my God, that's great.
Of draft rooms. It was awesome.
Did you have any actual like sway and pull in the room, or were you just sort of sitting there?
I was just there. Yeah, I was just more observing, like a fly on the wall.
So did you get like throw out your opinion and they shot it down, or did you just sat?
No. I was just watching. I was just observing. They didn't want my. I tried to input. Hey, Drew Lock for a 6th round pick, and no one heard me. It was weird.
You kept saying one name, Teddy. Bring back Teddy. I love Teddy.
All right, boys. That's a wrap on this episode of Purple Daily, presented also by Federated. So Federated's been helping business owners for over 100 years in the state of Minnesota, and they can help you if you are looking. Let's say your business is a quarterback and you need some protection. Well, that's what Federated is. Your left tackle. Federated is your Christian Darrisaw as a business owner, and you can find out more about the tools they provide, like My Shield, and the peace of mind that they can give you as a business owner at federatedinsurance.com. Federated, it's our business to protect yours. All right, boys, we'll do it again tonight. Live stream Purple Daily Draft Special. We'll see what the Vikings do in the 2nd and 3rd rounds. Super fun weekend, and thanks again to everyone who clicked that subscribe button last night to get us over 14,000 subs on the Purple Daily YouTube channel. Whether you consume us via podcast or via YouTube, we appreciate you. And we'll do it again tonight.